back for the final time this football season. It is State Champs Indiana Extra Point, presented by Lawrence Technological University. Greg Rakestraw and Bob Stambazze, just 6 games to talk about, as in the 6 that took place this weekend at Lucas Oil Stadium. Our way of capping what has been a wonderful fall here in 2019. We will go from small to large, 1A to 6A, and provide our thoughts and somewhat in-depth analysis, and then there's other nonsense that we throw in there as well in recapping every state championship game. And the most competitive state final, the most dramatic state final, was the one that was played first, Friday at noon, and I would say it may have been the biggest surprise, although not to the folks at Central Catholic and not to you, because you correctly predicted this one. I've been on the Lutheran bandwagon all season long, but congratulations to Brian Ney and Lafayette Central Catholic, 29-28, going for 2 with 10 seconds left to play, and they get the championship.
Well, if you saw the game, you saw how composed the quarterback was. And on that last play, he had to stay composed because that would have been a very simple pass to overthrow the receiver out in the flat, but he had been really under control all day long, and just what a great high school football game. And that you've been talking about this McFadden kid all year long from Lutheran, and having the opportunity to get to see him was really fun and special. This kid is really special. I liked his hips, I liked his shoulders, but I liked the way he read his hogs up front to get him into those seams where he needed to go.
I thought for Central Catholic it was huge to get off to a great start, and they did. Clearly 14-0. Then Lutheran answers with a couple of touchdowns of their own. A lot of great seniors we could talk about, but let's start with the sophomore signal caller in Clark Barrett for Lafayette Central Catholic. Got to play last year as a freshman on a team that got to the sectional final, but then were drilled by the eventual state champions in Pioneer. It's a very senior-laden Lafayette Central Catholic team, but a sophomore signal caller who didn't play like a sophomore.
Well, you look at him and you listen to what he had to say, the fact that last year he learned to be composed. And when you watched him in the ball game this week in the state finals, that was the conversation, how relaxed he looked. We're nervous. He's relaxed and just had a phenomenal game as a true leader, and that's what quarterbacks are.
But let's talk about also this kid's athletic background.
Oh, wow.
Older brother Carson, a 4-year varsity contributor and really a potential Indiana All-Star this year, playing for Lafayette Central Catholic. Dad, both a basketball player, but primarily a baseball player at Purdue University, and Dad, the head coach of the basketball program at Central Catholic. Yet Clark going the football route, at least during the course of the fall, and again, he was fantastic. And you referenced the job the Hogs did from Lutheran's perspective. How about the job that, other than Gus German, their big left tackle, a pretty undersized offensive line for CC did in terms of pass protecting to give Barrett all kinds of time, because he threw the ball 45 times on Friday.
Yeah, it's just not the strength. It's the quickness that the lineman can get set up and get in the proper lanes to take care of the defense. If you are slow, they're going to get by you, but the quickness, it's not always the big size, as you said about German being so big, and he is a man, let me tell you that. But they really got set up quick and give him a lot of time. He didn't really struggle at all throughout the game, getting the ball downfield. There were a couple times you watch him throw, but he was so relaxed, so composed, he had to zippity-doo-dah on the ball to get it where it needed to go and just not getting it out of the air.
And let's talk about the decision. It's the second time now in 3 years that a state championship has come down to a coach that scores a touchdown, which could have led to a tying extra point, goes, nope, I'm going for the win right now. Scott Buning 2 years ago in 2A, Southridge over Woodland, and Brian Ney, before he was the head coach at Central Catholic, he was the offensive coordinator at Decatur Central, so he's the offensive mind. They're going for 2, and seemingly every coach always has a 2-point play they think's an automatic score. That's what Brian felt, and he got the job done.
You know, you watch it, and the thing I'm looking for on the play is a pick. And the pick wasn't there, so it's really a good, clean, well-executed route by the receivers from Central Catholic to keep Lutheran and not getting into contact with the defenders back here to get the pick play set up. But it wasn't a great rollout by Barrett, and there was nobody, and I do mean nobody, close to him. He dropped it right in the bucket.
So, again, this was a Central Catholic program that had not won a sectional in the last 3 years since Kevin O'Shea had left to take the job at North Central. Congratulations to Brian Ney. I think most felt they were at least a sectional champ, or probably a regional champ. But I think a lot of us thought the stopping point would have been South Adams. Well, instead they got Adams Central. Then it was like, hey, okay, great, congratulations, but Lutheran has been the number one team since day one in 1A, but CC had other ideas.
Yeah, two teams all year we really spoke about being number one, and Lutheran was one of those. But what a great team Lutheran had a phenomenal year, and I got to tell you again and again and again, the McFadden kid won my heart as an outstanding high school football player.
And obviously Dave Pash has built a great program at Lutheran. We've talked about this. They had gotten to the semi-state for the previous 5 years. So while they are disappointed in not winning the whole thing, this was still the best season in that program's young history. They've been playing football for less than 20 years at Lutheran High School. They'll be back in the very near future in terms of the 1A state championship. In 2A, a rematch of a season ago, but as was talked about on this show a week ago, Eastbrook was probably a year ahead of schedule because they had graduated so much from last year's runner-up team. Webo didn't bring everybody back, but brought a lot of key pieces back, and that was on display. The final outcome, 44-7, Stars win first game on Saturday. Who won? Not a surprise. Margin of victory, that's the surprise.
That's a surprise, and there's no two to it that Eastbrook are the Buffalo Bills of the IHSA state tournament. Jeff Adamson has done a fine job, and you look at that community. That's a school right out in the middle of the hayfields, and what Coach Adamson done. We talked about it going back, clear back, beginning of the year with their two losses to Marion and Delta. They weren't rebuilding. They were just reprogramming these kids to understand their roles with this team. And what a fabulous job he did with this class here at Eastbrook. But man, oh man, so impressed with Webo. Their linemen up front were brutal. And I alluded to this before we came on. They tackled so well. All their tackles, if you go back and look at the film, were below the waist. Their first hits were below the waist. They were hitting up above where usually backs throw your shoulders and get rid of you. But these guys were really textbook on their tackling, and you really have to credit the fine coaching staff at Webo. They really did and executed a fabulous game plan.
Spencer Wright, the quarterback, second consecutive year that he wins the 2A state championship as the QB. Last year, he threw 4 touchdown passes to one receiver. This year, he threw 4 incompletions the entire game. 14 of 18, 254 yards and 2 scores. Also carried the ball 10 times, 56 yards and 2 scores. So how about this? He's just shy of 10 touchdowns in 2 state championship game appearances.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just totally remarkable when you look at that. And I also look at their defense again. We talk a lot about the offensive stats, but when you hold a good Eastbrook team to 132 total yards in a contest, especially at state finals, you deserve that big ring you're going to get and that big plaque you're going to put on the wall. The defense program set up for that game, I don't know if I've seen any better. It really was exceptional.
And for Justin Pelly, the son of a legendary head coach in Central Indiana, in Denny, who ran the program at Speedway forever. Denny is on Justin's staff, which is really cool to see. Congratulations to the Pelly family. And simply put, Coach Adamson, I think, in the very near future is going to get that state championship.
I
Would
agree.
not be surprised if Eastbrook is in that same game a year from now because, again, they were so young this year.
And the kids know what you talk to them. They expect of what they're doing now. They expect to be at the state finals. They know what's expected of them, and that's one thing. That's respect, I think. And I think you'll agree with me, Greg. That's respect they not only show to the program, but to Coach Adamson and what he's done.
If there was a game that most played out as expected by those outside of the respective communities this weekend, it was Chatard against Heritage Hills.
Yeah.
Chatard, again, for the great history this program has, now 14-time state champs, you can make a very cogent argument that this was the best team they've ever had. And they have produced multiple NFL players over the years. I can point to linemen playing for the Houston Texans and the Dallas Cowboys right now. That would be brothers, the Martin brothers, that are playing in the National Football League. They've produced numerous guys that have played at a major college level. But again, because of the schedule in which Chatard played, a largely 5A and 6A schedule, their only loss was by 10 to Cathedral in week number 4. This was Heritage Hills kept it competitive, but still it was decisively in favor of Bishop Chatard.
You know, you talked a lot about the teams in the metro area, and two teams really spoke a lot all year long was Lutheran and Chatard, and Chatard is just they're so special. This is a team you pay your $6 to go see. I mean, this is a special football team, special football program when you look at the overall picture. But what athletes they've got to really execute on the field. It's something special.
And while they have somewhat modernized the offense with Rob Doyle replacing the retired Vince Lorenzano in terms of throwing it a little bit more, they didn't have to this year because they were so good up front. And Dalen Taylor is a special talent. You know, Chris Landis does a great job of being our executive producer of this show, gives us all this information so we look good each and every week. And basically, Dalen Taylor was almost on this list every week, and he was averaging about 10 yards a carry. Well, it wasn't that gaudy this time around. He was about 6.5 yards a pop against Heritage Hills, but he picks up a couple of scores in those 174 yards.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned what's going on up front because we have great backs, great athletes, you know, as I like to call them, the pretty boys. But the reason they're pretty is because of what the Hogs do up front, and these guys have done a fabulous job at Chatard for a couple years. Oh, wait a minute, forever.
A couple decades, a couple of quarters of a century, yeah.
But you know, that's where it's at. I mean, you really build the championships off your line up front, and then you plug in those special players. And when you get a special player like Taylor, you just say thank you.
Yep, Chatard again. They are 14-1 now in 15 state championship appearances. Could expect more of the same next year. And for Heritage Hills, this was a return to kind of days gone by. This was their only loss of the season. Had a chance on the ISC Sports Network to see their games in both the regional and semi-state rounds. Congratulations to the Patriots. It was a phenomenal season. Again, you could easily see these two teams play each other again a year from now.
Yeah, and not to slight Heritage Hills at all, but what a fabulous season they've had this year themselves. That was their only loss. To win 14 games in a high school season is unbelievable. But the second thing is every coach will tell you, I get more weeks of practice with these kids, and they're ready to come back.
Here's the crazy thing is that Heritage Hills will always be known as a football school because of what Bob Clayton did there for so many decades. A lot of these same kids are really good basketball players. They're playing in events like the Forum Tip-Off Classic and the Hall of Fame Classic in December. So you'll see a lot of the same names you saw on the Friday matinee at Lucas Oil. They think they can make it to Bankers Life Fieldhouse in March. Wow. So, again, keep your eye on Heritage Hills from a basketball standpoint. Their head coach in Nate Hawkins this winter as well. Halfway through the state championship games, 4A, 5A, 6A. We'll have those recaps when we come back. Our season-ending edition of State Champs Indiana Extra Point. And as always, it's presented by Lawrence Ethnological University.
I'm on the Blue Devil football team, and that's a great place to be because other colleges wouldn't let me be both a football player and a nursing student. And just because I'm a dog on the field doesn't mean I can't take care of people. And man, do I love people. The small class sizes at LTU give me awesome access to my nursing professors. Lawrence Tech, where Blue Devils dare.
Welcome back for the final time this football season here on State Champs Indiana Extra Point. Thanks to our friends at Lawrence Ethnological University for being our sponsor all season long. Executive producer is Chris Landis. Thanks to the entire staff of the ISC Sports Network. They have been our home base for this program during the course of the year. Wes Wolf, Jake Morris, Sean Walker, Greg Mash, Mitch Early, everybody involved behind the scenes at ISC. 1, 2, and 3 state championships have been reviewed. On to 4, 5, and 6. And how about Evansville Memorial? Not just playing up a class, but playing without one of the most potent quarterback-wide receiver combos in the history of the state of Indiana. Michael Lindauer is now playing football at the University of Cincinnati. Branson Combs is now playing at Southern Illinois. And without those two guys, Memorial wins the state title in a larger classification. And it was their defense that got the job done. 21-3. No team in the postseason, Coach, scored more than 14 points against the Tigers.
And what a remarkable effort there. They fall behind early 3-0 and pitch a shutout thereafter and come back and put 21 points on the board in the second half. But this Memorial team really just kind of dug in and you call the game, but they just come after it.
And I mean, it was a physical, hard-hitting game, and it's not an overly big Memorial team. Along the defensive line, I believe the Jones kid, Austin Jones, was their biggest defensive lineman at 250. Combs kind of plays D-tackle, D-end at 225, but, man, he brings a wallop every time he tackles somebody. Their defensive end in Logan Johnson's a $190. So, again, they're not an overly big team, but what they had a lot of were kids that were 2- and 3-year starters, 2- and 3-year contributors that were playing in a state championship game for a third year in a row.
Yeah, and you said physical, and we've talked about East Noble being physical all year long to come in there with 14 wins, and this was their first loss, but Memorial taking that trek up there with the type of players that they've got size-wise, but when you put a program together like they have, they'll take a game with a 1-point victory or 15. Doesn't matter. They just want to win.
And again, because of the conference they play in the Southern Indiana Athletic Conference, the Evansville schools plus Castle, they have played a 4A schedule, forever. So it wasn't like it was that big of a leap for them playing up a classification. It was different in terms of the size of linemen they would compete against when they played against Mooresville and Mount Vernon and schools like that in the regional and semi-state rounds. Defensively, again, was how they got the job done. 3 points allowed in both the semi-state and in the state finals. And, again, Bailey Parker, the quarterback for East Noble, finished with over 3,000 yards passing, over 1,300 yards rushing for the season. But he was really off his game, and that was because of the job Memorial did defensively.
That's right where I was going to go. I mean, holding him under 155 total yards passing and running for the day is a yeoman's job on the defensive side. But they had a game plan. That's the guy they were going to spy. They weren't going to let Parker beat him. If somebody was going to beat Memorial, was going to be somebody else, wasn't going to be Parker, and they showed him he wasn't going to beat him either.
Again, Combs was fun to watch. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. He was such a difference maker on defense. Congratulations, East Noble, getting back to the state championship game for the first time in 16 years. Now the question is, knowing they graduate so many seniors and knowing the really good area of 4A football they play in, how can you take this momentum and try to get back to Lucas Oil in a quicker fashion and know that the last time they won a sectional before this year was that 2003 state championship run?
They get some kids coming, and I think that's what's good about the program out there at East Noble. Plus, they're in an area where they don't like the other schools. They don't like them. So pride is going to play a factor in what the Knights will come up with next year.
And for the Tigers, they had 2 players each have 2 interceptions in that game, in Alan Michael Steptoe and Logan Lively. 4 for the game. They had 12 different players record a pick in 14 games played, 23 interceptions for the season. Big play was the thing defensively this year for Evans Memorial. They won with an aerial attack the last couple of years. They won on defense this year. Congratulations to John Hurley. By the way, that state championship victory, his 100th win as the head coach of Memorial, bringing home a second state title in 3 years. In 5A, we haven't used your favorite word yet tonight.
Might have been a slobber knocker.
There was no might be about it. Exactly what it was. Number 1 versus number 2, 13-0 versus 13-0. New Pal and Valpo. This New Pal team wasn't challenged very often the last couple of years. My goodness, they're 88-4 under Kyle Ralph in 7 years. They haven't been challenged very often that entire time. But when they were, this team found another gear in the third quarter. It's exactly what happened against Cathedral in the regional round, where they were down 10-7 and then won 35-10. Same thing here. 10-10 game at halftime. Charlie Spiegel, 1 touch, touchdown. Turnover, points. Pick 6 by New Pal. You blink your eyes, it's 27-10. Valpo didn't go away. But again, a lot of folks thought New Pal would win, and that the Dragons did, back-to-back 5A state champs.
I think, again, you look at a team that talking about tradition. A lot of times we forget that these are still high school kids, and they only get to play for 4 years. And they're filling the shoes of somebody that played 4 years prior as the rotation comes through. So what they have been able to accomplish is truly remarkable. And to have a kid like Spiegel that's just shy, and I know you brought up kidding
11,000.
How close was he? He was 150 yards short of 11,000 yards. I mean, get out of here. But that just speaks volumes about this New Palestine program. The Hogs up front, he needs to take them out. The Hardys.
Well, something along those lines, yeah. Spiegel's 80-yard run. And again, it wasn't the day where he put up the gaudy stats, 167-ish yards rushing. He would get impressive 4-yard runs. When there was only a yard there, he'd find a way to get 4. But the home run that he hit to start the third quarter, complete game changer, because really Valpo took momentum into halftime, tied at 10.
Yeah, he cut back against the flow and went to the house from 80. But the thing you also have to look at with this kid is how many times he actually carries the ball and doesn't put the ball on the ground. That is exceptional with this young man. He is so special.
I'm not sure that I need to say anything more about Charlie Spiegel's career, knowing that he finished just shy of 11,000 yards rushing in 4 years. He is the only player in the history of Indiana high school football to have back-to-back 3,000-yard rushing seasons. He has the 3rd and 6th most rushing yards in a single season in IHSAA football history. And I believe he finishes with the 3rd most touchdowns and 6th most career rushing yards in the history of American high school football. He's Mr. Football. I'm not exactly breaking the suspense by telling you that. I know John Hurley was campaigning for Brock Combs at the end of his game. Brock's a fantastic player. The name has been engraved in the trophy. It's going to Charlie Spiegel at this point. But let's acknowledge how many other great seniors are on this New Pal team. And up front, it starts with Kyle King.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I guess throw one other thing in there about Spiegel. When you look at a kid like this, how hard he plays, it's so special. Almost 11,000 yards. But I'm sure him and the linemen really talk a lot.
Sure.
Not only on the game during the game. Is this seal there? Can I kick him out here? There's conversations going on throughout the week too. What is going to work best? And great players really communicate with their teammates, and I think that's what also helps with this senior-laden, some of these seniors here with the Dragons.
And speaking of the seniors, congratulations to Eric Raudebush. He was the young man that lost the quarterback job in the offseason to an underclassman, to a junior in Lincoln Roth. Roth got hurt late in the first quarter. Raudebush moves from wide receiver. Clearly kind of affected the passing game a little bit. It wasn't as effective, but yet he continued to steer the ship in the right direction, and he finishes his final game at New Pal as the quarterback that won the state championship.
Well, how about the Vikings?
Yeah.
I mean, they did not roll over. They're down big. They come back in the fourth quarter and make it a whale of a ball game, or as I like to say, it was a slobber knocker coming down to the wire, and they just hung in there. But they started to wear New Pal down. Not many teams can actually say that, and they did a great job.
And while they graduate some key pieces, their 2 big names up front are back next year in Cooper Jones and Dylan Dingman. They are both Division I level recruits. I know Cooper's kind of getting looks at the Big Ten level. Dylan's getting looks at the Mid-American Conference level. Don't be surprised if Valpo is in this 5A state championship game a year from now. Final game we'll talk about, final game of the 2019 season, was a rematch, and I was fortunate to be on the call of both of the games in Week 3 and then again in Week 15. And the 2 final scores were within 3 points of each other. Carmel 20, Center Grove 17. The obvious story here, 4 first-half turnovers by Center Grove. Carmel got 10 points off of those turnovers, eventually built a 20-3 lead, and then hung on in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, hung on. What a great word right there, hung on. But by the way, congratulations. I'm sure you'll be getting your ring also, having been around Carmel 6 times this year and being part of that. That's unbelievable. You are a true champion.
Good thing the hand gesture is not visible on camera right now. You're number 1, pal.
But I got to say, well, you get to see these, and it's so special to get to see these MIC teams. And while people don't understand, this is big-time football in Indiana, watching these big programs. But how you look at Center Grove, they could have walked and said, goodbye, we're down, we're going to quit, roll over. But here they come back. Wow.
And they're so young.
Oh.
The one area they're not young was the offensive line. That was largely a senior group, and largely is a word I don't use on accident because, man, that group was absolutely massive. But all of their skill positions, they literally had one player that touched the ball from the quarterback, wide receiver, or running back position that was a senior. Harrison Luck, he had 1 catch. Everybody else returns from that group. And the job that Carson Steele did playing through injury in that game, a couple of different broken bones and a couple different parts. The fact that they call him the Warhorse at Center Grove, he earned that name.
You know, Greg, you had talked about him all year, not being able to play. Then when he come back and got a few games in, when I listen to you rave about a young man, wait for him to get back, and then talking to you off before we got on the air today, how special you got to be really somebody to admire to come back through the injuries he has and still played with the injuries he has.
Yeah, Taven Jackson was fantastic. The quarterback at Center Grove often is asked to hand the ball off and be kind of the field general. But, hey, if we get in a pinch, go throw it. That's what he did. He had 10 consecutive completions at one point in the second half. Now, he did throw a untimely pick late in the second quarter that led to 3 points for Carmel. But still, he is just a sophomore. Again, you know his brother very well. He plays basketball at Indiana University. He's Mr. Basketball. I think Taven in a couple of years is going to have a really interesting choice. Am I playing football at the next level? Am I playing basketball at the next level? I think he will have those options. Thought he was fantastic.
Another great comment you made. When he had to throw the ball, he did. I mean, you're 17 of 21.
Yep.
That's pretty darn good against quality team of Carmel. And congratulations to him, really, on a whale of a ball game.
Now let's talk about these Carmel Greyhounds. Defensively, Cole Brevard up front was a guy that didn't get a lot of attention from a stat standpoint, but he took up basically 2 blockers every play. He's going to play at Penn State next year. Ty Wise had an interception in the game. He's going to play at Indiana University next year. Carmel, you can almost change the names and faces every year, but defensively, that's really where they hang their hat.
History.
Yeah.
I mean, plain and simple history. You look at it, I think they got over 150 state titles.
152.
152.
Well played by you.
I did not do math very well.
Yes, you
or
did.
English.
You got within 2.
But I got within 2.
There was a plus-minus of 11 there. Job
well
done,
I'm
yes.
there. Look out. But when you're sitting there talking about history and kids, they know this stuff.
Yep.
You know, and they want to be part of something special. And that's why I think you look at Carmel year in, year out.
And Carmel played 3 different quarterbacks this year. They went to Christian Williams in week 6. Unfortunately, he has a season-ending injury against Homestead in the regional. They go to Gabe Quigley, who was the starter to begin the year and started last year's state championship game. Hadn't played since the early, say, first month of the season because he had a turf toe injury. He comes in, plays very well against Maryville, does what he was asked to do in leading the offense against Center Grove. He goes out with a shoulder injury. So they go to their 3rd quarterback, their sophomore, and Zach Osborne, who also got to play earlier in the year and actually won a game against Lawrence North in week number 5. So they went deep into the quarterback depth chart. But really the key for Carmel offensively all year long was simply you've got this deep stable of running backs, use them. Dylan Downing, Zach White, both really solid on Saturday.
It's tough to beat fresh legs
and
a fresh body. And by having that quarterback situation where they run 3 different quarterbacks at you, staying successful, keeping things minimized on that offensive scheme, but having backs like that with the Hogs up front, they're just tough to beat.
So congratulations to the 6 state champions, Central Catholic, Webo, Chatard, Memorial, New Pal, and Carmel. Congrats to the other 6 teams that had wonderful seasons and made it to Lucas Oil Stadium. Congrats to the 41,000 of you that attended the IHSAA football state finals this weekend in Indianapolis. That is the 5th highest total in the history of the state finals, dating back to the 1970s. My friend, it has been a pleasure to be with you each and every week. Final thoughts in this season, if you would.
Thank you. It's been a real privilege to be here with you. But, man, how exceptional is high school football in Indiana? It's grown by leaps and bounds. People say, and a coach told me this once, he said football is under attack. Well, let me tell you what, football is no better than what we're going to let it be, right? So let's get out there, support the game, have fun with the game, and support high school athletics here in Indiana.
I think fans have done that by the droves. Thank you so much for watching us all season long. We will take a bit of a holiday hiatus while the high school basketball season gets ramped up in December. We'll be covering it for our respective networks, the MyBash Sports Network and for the ISC Sports Network. But we will reconvene here once we get through the new year. We will change the name because extra point doesn't exactly apply. You could take an extra point in basketball if you'd like to, make a free throw every now and then. But how about hang time? Something clearly Bob and I are in short supply of. So that debuts on January the 8th, State Champs Indiana, hang time, talking all things Indiana high school boys basketball, and look for it on the various social media channels of State Champs Indiana. For Chris and Jake and everybody else behind the scenes, and for the Baz, this is Greg Rakestraw. Thanks for joining us for a final time this year, State Champs Indiana Extra Point, presented by Lawrence Ethnological University.